What if walking became a way to remember yourself, the earth, and your purpose? Welcome to Catalyst of Change, the space where we explore what it means to lead with soul, create with intention, and serve from the heart. Today's guest is Mario Rigby, a global explorer, eco-educator, and change maker who has literally walked across nations to spark conversations around sustainability, inclusion, and conscious travel. His journey across Africa captured international attention, but it's his deeper message that leaves a lasting impact. This conversation is about the courage to move differently, the power of slowing down, and what it truly means to walk your talk. Let's dive in. So I'm so excited for this conversation. Really excited. And thank you for being here and being with us today.
My pleasure. Yeah, absolutely.
It's been amazing to witness your journey and to see the extraordinary feats you've been going to all around the world in your adventures and in your travels, and also in your message that you bring to the world and the heart that you bring forward. And I'm curious to start, like, before all of this, like before the international attention and before your platform and all of that, and just like, where did this adventure Mario begin?
Mm. I would say the spark began not on the day that I planned to walk the length of Africa, but I think it was an accumulation of years of essentially learning about, certain truths about the world and humanity that I didn't know before. It was, so when I turned like in my mid-20s, essentially, I began investigating about who I really am and, what are we all doing here on Earth? And that investigation kind of led me down this rabbit hole of questions, And these questions led me to the understanding that we can control our lives any way we can. And we have full autonomy of this, right? Before that, I thought that I was a slave to my thoughts and what people thought I needed to do. And the more you do that, the more you become free in a way, right? But before you become free, you kind of like go through the stage of confusion and anger and resentment towards, the people that you think did you wrong in humanity. Like, why do people live in poverty, and, why do nations exist? All these different really big fundamental questions I feel that are a touchy subject for a lot of people. And it's it's just so big. How do you stop a pendulum when you're on it? At one point, I started to believe that, okay, knowing all this knowledge and, understanding about where humanity is and who we are, and still learning, of course, and I am still learning even at this very moment. I was like, well, what can I do with this knowledge now? Like, it's one thing to know about all these different things, but what do you do with it? And there was this one movie that actually inspired me. There are two movies. The first one was this one movie where I don't want to necessarily, I forgot the name of it actually, but essentially it's like, it's back in the day, and it was about this guy who wears these sunglasses. You probably know the name of this one. He wears these sunglasses, and when he wears them, he sees the truth in a way. He sees the false advertisement. He sees people who are like apparently like alien species or whatever. But when he puts them on, he can see the facade, essentially, right? And I felt like that's the kind of reality I was living. I had the sunglasses on that allowed me to see reality in that sense. And it really shook me in a way where I thought to myself, man, I need to do something about this. And when you're in your 20s, you believe that, everything you see is true. And you really push that out on people. And the second movie I watched, and I'm going to tie this all together, was it's not a movie, but it was a TV show at the time called The Black Panther. way before the movie Black Panther came out. And it was the first episode in which T'Challa, the king of Wakanda, had become essentially the Black Panther. But before he became the Black Panther, his uncle took over after his father died, and he decided to go on a walkabout around Africa. And this episode really spoke to me like deeply. And I thought to myself, these are really beautiful moments in which T'Challa took his time to explore his continent, and he got into all kinds of trouble. He explored the safaris. He saw animals that he's never seen before. He fell in love. He, he lost all his money. Like, he went through all these different experiences. And I essentially fell in love with that, the way that they shot that. And the reason he did that was because he felt like in order to become a leader, he needed to understand the people. He needed to understand where he came from. And I felt like I was missing a piece of me. And that piece of me was my deeper rooted heritage. Where are we all from? Coming from the continent of Africa as slaves and brought over to the Caribbean, the only story that we really know about is the story of us coming over as slaves and being slaves on the plantations in the Caribbean and in the Americas. And I wanted to dig deeper than that. I said, you know what? There's got to be more. There has to be more about us than that. And no one's going to pick up those truths except for your own self. And so that's where my quest for finding out my own truth began. And I said, well, if I want to see Africa, not the way that it was told on the news or in the media, which, always shows Africa as like a poor place where people need help. I wanted to investigate myself because deep down inside, I knew this couldn't be true. And when I went on this journey, I began in Cape Town and continued up all the way to Cairo, Egypt. The concept is incredibly simple. Walk the length of Africa from Cape Town to Cairo, from one end to the other. But the execution of that was incredibly difficult. The amount of times that I've been lucky to have survived, had I moved a couple of inches too far to the left, I may have been hit by a stray bullet, or had the mood of a hippo not been good that day, I would have been mauled by those hippos. Had I spooked, I don't know, these cows that surrounded me when I was camping in a farm, because they like to herd in big numbers. And when you spook them, they'll trample you. And they're one of the leading causes of human fatalities amongst mammals.
Wow.
Which is a very funny fact to know. So that's just that. Those are just those kinds of risks, and then we're talking about like human risks and really learning how to negotiate with people and asking for people, to stay in their homes, as well as like navigating visas and entries and how to get out of jail. But basically, having a get out of jail card system throughout Africa was really important for me as well. So there were like just insurmountable obstacles that otherwise would have stopped, I think, most people.
Yeah, I mean, just listening to you describe like the tiniest glimpse, it's just like, whoa. Like because someone not having been through that, or maybe not even having taken the time to consider that, it's just a testament to like your determination, your perseverance, like your ability to have like you said, like have those glasses on and just like go and like have that inner feeling, that inner inspiration or determination, and just like walk with it. And like seeing, like you just listed a few examples of like you said, insurmountable hurdles that would like stop for sure the majority of people. I've never even had the chance of having a conversation with someone who's like experienced those things, you know? So it's so amazing. And it's like fascinating. So my curiosity is like being along that journey. What did you do when you encountered those challenges? Like, how did you persevere? What did you do?
I did different things for different situations. Um, I can give you an example because I feel like words and symbols aren't enough to describe what it really is. I think you have to experience it. And so the best way for me to tell it to you is through stories, right? And the stories, the things that have happened to me. There was one point in time where I was on the beach in South Africa, and this was near the beginning of the expedition. And I was going on a journey called I call it it's basically a death trap where you're on the beach and you're walking along the coast of South Africa. And a lot of people think like, oh, that's like sounds like a nice walk, but if you turn left into the bushes and the land, there's no civilization for hundreds and hundreds of kilometers. And whatever's in the bush could probably kill you within, 20 hours or so. So you have like venomous snakes, spiders, rocks, crevices, thick bush. You can get lost, lack of water. So you don't turn left. And you can't turn right because that's where the ocean is. And these oceans are, part of the Indian Ocean where it's like some of the worst waves and conditions. And also the great white sharks live amongst there too as well, right? And so there's shark infested waters. And then you have the bush with like venomous snakes and all kinds of animals. And then you have the beaches where if you walk back, then, that's too far because you've already walked, say, beyond 100 kilometers. And you don't have enough food rations to go back or water rations. So the only way to go is to move forward. And this one time I had miscalculated how much water I needed for my walk. And this was a week long journey. And the reason I miscalculated was because I thought there was a river and I thought I could collect water there because on the map it showed that there was, access to fresh water through this river. And of course it was dry. And immediately you get into a point where you're just like, whoa, I could possibly die right now because your options are very limited. And then you go into like pure survival mode. So, and to me, I thought of it as like a fun game. It's like playing a video game, when you look at your life vitals and it's going down, but the game gives you options to live. It's like, oh, if you do this, it's going to be very difficult, but you could survive. So it was like either I could distill the salt water by cooking it and collecting the vapor, which would be very slow and cumbersome. It would take a long time. Or I could dig the sand and look for fresh water there, but it might be a hit or miss, most likely a miss. Or I could find some shade and wait it out and wait till the evening to drop and have whatever left of my water and then just do like a full sprint to the next location where I needed to go. So I ended up going for option 3. Decided to go for a full sprint, wait for the evening. Took some shelter in the shade, and I felt like, okay, I'm gonna rest up. But before that happened, I passed out, and because I was really so close to having severe dehydration, and I remember passing out, and I looked up. And I remember like falling back on the beach on the sand, and I looked up, and there was a seagull that flew over me, and I could remember feeling so at peace. But when that seagull looked at me, I could see, it's almost like I zoomed into its face. When I saw it look at me, it almost felt as if I vortexed into its existence in a way where I became the seagull looking back at myself on the beach. And I remember, yes, this is a hallucination, but it's telling me something. And the hallucination was essentially me being the bird looking at myself. And I saw a vision of my body on the beach with blood, although I wasn't bleeding, but I saw like blood coming from my body into the water and merging together. And to me, it was that same kind of feeling that, let's say, if you're on ayahuasca. I've never done ayahuasca, but I'm assuming it's I think it's a similar journey that a lot of people talk about, where you essentially feel one with everything else. And it's not just to know that, but I felt it and experienced it. I was dying and I was becoming one with the organism of Earth, because we are literally a part of Earth's organism, right? The surface of the Earth is that thing that we are made out of. It's like skin cells to skin, and we are the cells. And I began to understand that and feel it and know that inherently. And I could see myself merging with everything. And so what kept me going is the question was really that I no longer had fear after that. Fear just disappeared. I was no longer afraid of dying because I felt like I could not die, even if, like, yes, my physical body is gone, but I feel like we are all part of the organism that we share, and therefore I will always be a part of that. As a human body, I think our egos, we separate ourselves from that, and that makes us want to believe that we are above the thing that we are made out of, which is incredibly wrong. And that lacking of fear is what actually drives you forward. A lot of people, when they have fear, like the best thing to do sometimes in these survival situations is to actually sit and to die, because you can just sit and you're just like, okay, I'm going to rest, because it's easier to do that than to keep going. You know, a lot of people in Mount Everest who actually die in the death zone, which is like, 8,000 meters above, it's sometimes easier to give up than to keep going, because it's just so hard, so painful. And the brain is just like wanting you to just, like, everything in your body is telling you to quit. Your cells are dying. You're lacking oxygen in your brain. And the fear absolutely stops you. And so me having this lack of fear is what continued my journey moving forward. I didn't have the fear of feeling more pain. I didn't have the fear of, okay, I need to do more work and step it up. I didn't have the fear of, well, what if this happens and that happens? If I needed rest, I would rest. And it was really that kept me going. There's nothing really else that can keep you going. Like, you can't say stuff like, today's going to be I'm going to motivate myself. Motivation doesn't even help at this point. It's essentially just become like letting this journey become a part of your life. Like how people wake up to go to 9 to 5 and they really truly believe that they need to go to work. Otherwise, like, their life is completely done. You know what I mean? Like, at that level, that's what I believed, what my journey was at that level, that I needed to wake up in the morning, put on my boots, walk 12, 15 hours a day with my 40-pound backpack, and just do that every single day. And I didn't see it as a burden or as a huge obstacle in a way. I saw that as my living, like the way that I live. And when you add that to your expedition, it no longer becomes as hard as people might think it is. It just becomes like daily life. Like daily life is waking up in the morning and rolling the dice and being like, okay, am I gonna get shot at today? Am I gonna go to jail? Am I gonna get kidnapped? Am I gonna get mauled by like large animals? Is like, is a snake gonna bite me? Am I gonna get attacked by a scorpion? Whatever. Am I gonna, is the sun going to give me heat stroke? Anything can happen, you know? Or can I go to a village and they treat me like a hero? Or it could go the other way. Can I go to a village and they have pitchforks and knives against me? Like, and any of those can happen at any time, at any point, and there's nothing you can do about it. And so your body and your mind builds this resilience of, like a tough outer body and a tough inner body. And by tough, I don't mean rugged in the sense that I don't care about anything, or I don't take anything in, or I'm not emotional anymore. It's actually quite the opposite of that. You feel more, you understand more because you have to. You're dealing with really authentic people when you're in this part of Africa, and particularly in Eastern Africa. You're dealing with people who don't hide behind a facade in a way because they haven't learned quite yet how to do that, So you're dealing with a lot of authenticity, and the only way to get along with them is to also have that authenticity, because then they trust you. And so I've learned how to really be my most authentic self, and that is another fear you have to let go of, is getting rid of a mask because you think that mask will save you.
Right. Oh my gosh, this is so profound. Like, well, first of all, just for anyone, you're with us today. So you made it to the end of the death trap, right?
I made it here. I made it. Yeah, exactly.
That's like, wow. And what you're saying about like coming to this place of being your authentic self. And also one thing you brought up, like you brought up the concept of 9 to 5, and you brought up like, what I think is so interesting is what you're saying is it's like a hyper representation that like at any point in our life, anything can happen. And in so many ways, it's almost like we live in this simulation where it's seemingly so that like things are predictable, and like we live in this, I'm going to work and da-da-da-da. But actually anything can happen at any moment. Like anything go in the car, a conversation with someone, death. Like you're talking about being faced with death. And it's like we live in an illusion that we're not faced with that in every moment. Anything can happen.
Right.
And you've lived that in such a visceral, tangible way, like on a consistent basis. That is like, I feel like you sharing that with us today is such a powerful, almost like a transmission of that wisdom in a way, because you've actually lived that and faced it. And so like that is just something that is astounding. And when you bring up being your authentic self, I wonder, how does that show up for you now? Like having completed that journey and going about in your life, like how does that show up for you? How has that shifted your life?
I mean, it's been a challenge in itself. I would say the post-Africa journey itself was challenging. I never did therapy after coming back from Africa, which was, I probably should have at that point in time to prevent a lot of unnecessary hardships from happening. But, I had a reverse culture shock in a sense. Coming back to Canada was really difficult with, the things that I think we complain about, the things that people really focus on were so shifted from reality. And when I say reality, I'm talking about if you took away all the guardrails here, we wouldn't make it necessarily. Most people wouldn't make it.
Yeah.
Right. But I think that's just a part of not just human nature, but the animal instinct, which is when things are comfortable, you relax, and you rely on a more of a positive outlook of your environment. And therefore it's hard for you to see things like climate change, you know. But I saw it firsthand in Malawi, for instance, where entire mountains were deforested overnight. And these people don't even understand how and why that's happening. And it's because it's our fault. And, you know, I've seen the exasperation of cutting down the trees because the plants that they grow can no longer grow in the heat that, you know, or the lack of water that that country was suffering from. But they had to burn more trees. So that's essentially the reason why the forests have been like cleared out. And then once all the trees are gone, then what? You know? And then they go to fishing, and then they go overfishing because they have to, in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So and I got to see all of this in a way that just was very obvious. You know, and that's the difference. Right here it's not obvious. We're in a very lucky place in a part of the world where we have all the different seasons, and you know, even if climate change did happen, I think we would still fare better than most countries, even though we're having all the wildfires and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But over there, they've already suffered. Yeah, so it was just really difficult to come back to the level of consciousness that people were at here compared to what I experienced when I was in Eastern Africa. You know, and I didn't know how to deal with that really properly at the beginning. And but you know, I was grateful in the sense of having really good people around me for a while, and you know, even till this day. And they've helped guide me to navigate the knowledge of what's actually happening in the world to how to adapt to a place that is a bubble, essentially.
Yeah, this really resonates deeply.
Yeah.
I cannot even imagine what it would be like to have, like you talk about storytelling, have all these experiences and then come to this place where it's like you could be just walking down the street, going to get a coffee or something or whatever you're doing, like just walk it, and like here you are holding this, you know, like in your wisdom, in your consciousness. It's like, and no one even knows. And it's like, do you know what's happening here? Have you like this feeling? And it moves me so deeply. And it resonates because, I mean, I won't go into detail, but I just want to share, like, I traveled to India and I lived in India for a number of months around 2017. And that's really what sparked what I'm doing today, because I was working in film and television. And when I came back, I'm like, I won't go into the detail, but there were also stories of these moments, of these things that happen, and of seeing mounds of clothing the size of an ocean. And it's like, how do you describe that to someone? I remember driving over a bridge and I was like looking out the taxi thinking, we're coming to a river. Like, and then I look and I'm like, and the size of this huge riverbed, it's just a mountain of clothes. Like, how do you tell? Like, how it's unimaginable. It literally, you'd think it's AI.
Yeah.
It's like, but it's real life.
Right.
And I thought, oh my gosh, that's our clothes. That's our, we're just throwing these things away.
Like
and
literally our clothes.
Literally our clothes. So it's just very small. It's not even 0.0001%, but there was an element of, I remember coming back. And if I'm being honest with you, I think my family and friends thought I went crazy for a couple of years.
Oh, yeah.
Because I threw out everything. I'm like, I'm going to be a monk and like do Kriya yoga for the rest of my life. And like, I can't live like this. I quit my jobs. Because it just, like what you're saying, it was so earth-shattering.
Mm.
And it was like, how do we go back to like living in, like you said, this bubble?
Right.
So I want to really like commend you and acknowledge you and like thank you for for persevering even here and now sharing, because you are like that torchbearer. You are bringing forward these stories that can transform these generations to come.
Mm.
And this is why it's such a gift to have you on Catalyst of Change, because you are that. And like the world needs to hear these stories from your mouth, from someone who has experienced it. And, you know, one of the things I'm curious to just take it back to something you shared is you mentioned about the narrative of, you know, slavery and all of this history. But what about the true history? What about the beauty of Africa, the culture, the fact that it's minerally like one of the, like it is the richest continent in the world.
No.
Like all of this, you know, the kings and the queens and the wisdom and all of this amazing culture. So my curiosity is like, as you were walking the length of Africa with that in your heart, like this adventurousness connected with, of course, the physicalness of the environment, you know, the wildlife and the people, but also like, what did you get enriched with from that perspective? Across the United States, millions are struggling with mental and emotional health challenges, especially our youth. Anxiety, depression, and loneliness are at record highs, and many are searching for inspiration and connection. At Love, Peace, Harmony, we bring healing through art, music, and community programs that inspire resilience and belonging. For $35 a month, you can become a standard member and help us reach more people with the tools to heal and thrive. Together, we can bring hope where it's needed most. Join today at lovepeaceharmony.org.
I think it was the diversity and knowing that there are so many different ways to live. You know, you go into one village, literally walk into a village, which was always a very interesting situation because, you know, every village perceived you differently. Um, some villages would be entirely matriarchal. Some would be patriarchal. I went to some where they had no food. They had restaurants, but the restaurants didn't have any food. And I would ask, I'm like, okay, like, so you're telling me there's no food in this entire village? And they said no, because the rebel soldiers have cut the roads or blocked the roads so that there's no access from government aid. And so you kind of have to live with them without food as well, right? I'm not saying that like I suffered as much as they did, but because for me it was just a few days. But for them, it's their entire lives. For some of the children, it was like their entire lives. And it was just so unnecessary. It was just essentially seeing, like, again, as I mentioned before, realities in very obvious ways. You know, like in Malawi, for instance, going back to Malawi, they have the fourth largest lake in the world, which I kayaked actually.
Wow.
It took me 2 months, but it was just, that's a whole different story.
Wow.
But that lake is the second deepest lake in the world, and it holds more biodiversity than any other lake in the world.
Wow.
Yet, the access to that lake is only to very few Malawian people. And Malawi is a very small country, and it's landlocked, so they don't have access to the sea. And the government has refused to create sustainable access to this water. So these people are literally dying from dehydration, and their crops are, essentially dying as well because they aren't able to water the crops. So I got to see how infrastructure is so incredibly important, and we take that for granted in the Western world. we have a lot of um, kind of gripes about, society and how it operates and whatnot. But infrastructure is one of the most important things for us first of all, even live, like building roads, having schools, medical facilities, and things like that. That becomes very obvious and becomes one of the most important things when you're in places like Malawi, Mozambique, especially in remote areas. And that has made me very grateful to be here in this part of the world where we have that. Another thing, so after infrastructure, it is the way that people are with each other. So there's this, you've probably heard this before, Ubuntu,
Yes.
right? And Ubuntu is a real spirit that lives in Africa, particularly in Eastern Africa, but I believe it's like all throughout Africa because I've been in different parts as well. And essentially they treat you as if the threat is gone, or if they don't have the fear. They treat you as if you are family or best friend from the get-go. Their ego is not as high or strong as a Western ego, I would say. They are incredibly humble when it comes to, how they interact with people. Till this day, I haven't once heard an East African swear at me. Until you go back to Canada, like, the first thing that happens is like a homeless person on the street calls you a name or something like that, which is ironic because first of all, there's a homeless person. And I didn't see that many homeless people in Africa, right? Although, yes, there is poverty, but they take care of each other in ways that we would probably never take care of ourselves with our neighbors. And there were times when I was actually on the news in Mozambique and it became national coverage. It was like really, really popular. And when I came out on the news, I was one of the most popular people in Mozambique.
Wow.
Now imagine this like completely remote place in the world that you never even knew existed until you started studying the countries in Africa. And you're in remote villages and people are stopping you, asking for autographs, photos, and calling your name in completely remote villages.
Wow.
This one morning I woke up, I started walking at around 4:30 in the morning in this really beautiful, beautiful tiny village. They're all surrounded by the richest mineral soil you could possibly imagine, like deep red soil everywhere. And most of these people live in communities amongst their families, and they have cashew nut trees, orange trees, mango trees, watermelon, papayas. Like they're rich. They are rich, and they are living very happily. Like the kids are all there. A lot of them are either matriarch or patriarch, but essentially you have the elder there, and the elder lives with the young, and the young live with the elders, and in the middle as well. And this family took me in, and the way that they took me in was essentially I would just wait by the gate, and by gate I mean just the entrance, really. And their front yard was like basically just the soil, but it was like, how do I explain this? They would like have this pattern that they scraped, right? So it's like these like really beautiful, intricate, kind of like patterns on the dirt that they would use like these rakes to create them. Wow. And it's so clean and so precise that you don't even want to step on it. But they invite you to enter into their yards. And it would be one of the cleanest, nicest places you would think, even though they would live in mud homes,
Mm.
you know, and it was a lot cleaner than a lot of places that I've been to here in Toronto, you
Mm.
know. And they're so proud of their homes too, because they have all the fruits, they have the bananas, they have the mangoes, they have all these different the oranges, and they're like really juicy fruits. Like we're not just talking like, you know, like little tiny things, but these are like the sweetest of the sweet that you can get.
Mm.
And they invite you into their homes, and they're willing to give you everything they have for a complete stranger. They don't know me. Within a few hours, just knowing that I'm someone that needs help, immediately they go and help me. They give me their last frozen meal. Their they share with me their fruits, and they try to pack my bag full, like with as much food as possible.
Mm.
Knowing that, you know, they don't have that much money, and yet they gave whatever they can to you. Um, these these times made me very emotional. And you know, and you were saying like, how do I cope with this now? Part of the coping mechanism that I needed to overcome was when people have everything and yet they're still so incredibly greedy
Mm.
and afraid to share. They think that they're giving a part of their bodies to you when you ask for, or when someone asks for anything from them. We have so much, but we share so little.
Mm.
And they share so much and have so little. And there's this saying that like, okay, when you're poor, you know, you tend to be a little bit more humane because you understand. But I think it's even deeper than that. I think there's like a deep rooted way of um of how Eastern Africans live.
Mm.
You know, I think they part of this Ubuntu culture, whether they're wealthy or not. I think it's a part of who they are.
Mm.
And to me, I'm really excited to see Africa rise, to see how the world could possibly change if maybe Africa, which is the motherland of all lands and all people, um, had the ability to become a dominant figure in terms of leading society,
Mhm.
you know, in the rest of the world. And I think it wouldn't be as frightening as people might make it out to be. You know, we've always made Africans, we've painted them to be these like villains, or these like savage and poor and incapable and uneducated. I found completely the opposite when I went to Africa. You know, I found a lot of wisdom there. You know, I've met a lot of incredibly smart, intelligent people who were creative in a completely different way than we are here.
Mhm.
You know, they would see the wisdom and knowing how to be one with the people and the animals and the land. You know, like the Masai Mara men, these warriors who live out in Tanzania and Kenya. You know, they used to hunt lions, and instead of hunting lions now, they still become they're still these ancient warriors, but they've converted hunting into protection. So
Mhm.
now they're the protectors of these lions in these safaris,
Wow.
right? So they've adapted their way of being, but they can still be traditional.
Mm.
And a lot of them even still live in the cities and in the coastlines, where here in Canada we've essentially eliminated all the indigenous people. There's so much we can learn from them.
So much. This is like, I just feel like the message that you're bringing forward, it is like this whole potential of what the world could be if we like open our hearts and minds to these
Hmm.
um, people who have the wisdom, like the ancient wisdom that we need now,
Hmm.
actually, to, like you said, live one with the animals, with the earth,
Hmm.
with each other, and bring that. Like, imagine if the world had the Ubuntu heart,
Hmm.
like what that world would look like. And for anyone who may have not heard Ubuntu before, how would you describe it for them?
Ubuntu, they can be described in many different English words. But for me, is essentially the way that I think Western people can understand is all for one and one for all,
Mm.
where, you know, a community in which shares everything amongst each other and one is not left behind. I think that is a. I really learned this one in South Africa in the townships, out of all the places.
Mm.
I was actually living in a township for a while in Cape Town, and a lot of people told me like, "Oh, you're gonna get killed there and whatnot, and you're gonna get robbed and da 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 da." And I actually did. They did steal some things from me at one point, but that was a different situation. But that doesn't make people bad. That's just the circumstances of which people live in.
Mm.
And I think we have to make this distinction very. I think it's a very obvious distinction, but we don't make it. So we come out to vilify people very easily. We say like, oh, this person stole from me, therefore they're evil. But we don't like, why did this person steal from you? I think there's this sense of we don't want to go further into our own thoughts and minds to question. It's easier to just like point and judge in a way. But this person that I visited in the township, to get to his home, I had to climb over really like dangerous garbage. Like there was a mound of garbage that I had to climb just to get into his home, which was made out of tin. It was the size of most people's bathrooms,
Mm.
right? So he would like live in this tiny little tin house, and then I was like, "How are you living?" And he said, "I'm helping the neighbors by cleaning their yards, and then the neighbors in return give me some of their food."
Mm.
And he said, "That's the currency that we have, essentially, in this community, and that's how we survive." And then he told me something else that was quite profound. And this was a young man. He was like probably in his mid-20s at the time. And he told me, he said, "Mario, you have the gift of not just money or being born in a different place, but you have the gift of the knowledge that that you can get out of any situation, or that you can do that you can do things." You get what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
and he said that the people in this village, they don't even know that that's a possibility,
Right.
because it's always been taught to them that they are nothing, that they can never amount to these things, that people who do think like that are special and above you. And that is so far from the truth. Every single human being on this planet possesses this ability where you can dream up something and you can figure out how to make that dream possible.
Mm.
It doesn't matter how far off you think you are. There are people like in where was this, in Ohoro region in Ethiopia. This is in southern regions of Ethiopia, where essentially this bracelet that I have here is essentially brass, and it's made from the bullet shells of AK-47s.
Oh my gosh.
And it was given to me by one of the children that was essentially a former child soldier. And they had buckets of these. And he heard about my story. And he essentially gave this one to me. He said, "This one is for you." And he put it on. And this was, I don't know how long ago this was, but over 7 years ago. And he put it on me. I haven't taken it off since.
Mm.
And essentially what this represents to me is the fact that there are people out there who are going through the absolute worst thing that a human could ever experience. And yet they found a way to try and get out of it, which is by taking the bullet shells of what they've used, that they were brainwashed to murder each other with. And they use that to get out of that. And hopefully that young boy who gave that to me, which I don't have contact with, but the boy who gave that to me, hopefully he was able to make enough money to get out of the situation that he was in.
Yeah.
And so if he can do that, if he can do that, anybody else can, you know, including myself. And so this is essentially a reminder of resilience.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing his story. I really felt as you were sharing that, like his presence with us, actually.
Yeah.
I really felt that, like, that's so moving. And I'm like, I'm just so moved.
Yeah, he had a beautiful, calm
So
presence.
beautiful.
Like, it wasn't eagerness. It wasn't pleading. I wasn't asking to feel sorry for him. It was almost like he heard my story. He was impressed and he felt inspired by that. And so he essentially gifted this to me, which was like incredible. Obviously I gave the money to him, but because it was like, again, so like he's not asking for a lot. This was a pennies.
Yeah.
And he, you know how grateful he was for pennies. And so these are the things that, and you understand this, like when you went to India and you saw all the clothes that essentially we wore, and maybe even in that pile it could be some clothes that you have worn.
Exactly.
You never know, right? The bare minimum that these people receive, but they don't necessarily need to receive, right?
Yeah.
We create these obstacles for the people to live this way. They don't necessarily need to live this way. You know, the reason this kid is living in that situation is because he's living in a world in which war is fabricated so that the materials that comes from that region of the world where cheap copper, gold, oil stays cheap. And the only way to keep it cheap is to have these regions continuing to fight each other so that they're not focusing on growth or prosperity, but they're fighting on scraps constantly. And that's really the secret. It's very simple. It's very easy. And this is something that for the life of me, I've known this for over a couple of decades now, but it's not something that's to be shared in mainstream media at all. You know, these are topics that we don't like to touch. And then when you do touch it, what can you do about it?
Well, one thing is, I feel like with you sharing this and with more and more people speaking up, speaking out, sharing their lived experience, sharing your lived experience, it's creating that awareness. And it's who knows what could come from that. Maybe in this moment, it's not this one thing, but it's this domino impact. And you're creating a huge ripple through all the work that you're doing, through your collaborations, through your social media, through sharing your stories on various platforms, through your books and more. And it's just taking all this wisdom and lived experience that you've had and creating this potential, sharing it with the world. And you have, and I feel will continue to create huge impact. And like you said, especially in the rising of Africa. And in turn, really the rising of the world. Because this is connected.
Yes.
And you speak a lot about these shifts of humanity. And so it's such an important conversation to be had and one to be continued, really, and just never stop. And I'm curious, you mentioned also to me earlier that you have a book, and I'd love to share that with our viewers and listeners as well. Youth mental health is one of America's most urgent challenges. A vast percentage of United States high school students report persistent sadness or hopelessness. Research shows that art and music therapy can reduce anxiety and depression and strengthen emotional regulation skills. By joining as a Love Peace Harmony member for $35 a month, you help fund healing art and music workshops, mindfulness and emotional wellness programs, and safe spaces for youth connection and confidence, building stronger communities together, bringing healing and hope nationwide. Join us at lovepeaceharmony.org today.
Yeah. So, a couple of books. One is a photo book, which is a journey. It's about a journey that I went on with my friends to Algeria. And my friend is Algerian, and this was her homeland, and she wanted to visit and see her heritage. And it was incredibly difficult to have access to this place because you need special visa, and we needed actually police escorts to get to certain parts of this region. But the quest was, what is it like for people living in the middle of the Sahara? What is it like for them to survive and live in these places? And, are they happy? I wanted to know, like, is it possible, and are they happy? And so we set out to live amongst the Tuareg people in close to a village called Jeannette. And within this region, it's essentially just barren desert. We're smack middle in the Sahara Desert with landscapes that I've never seen before in my life because, very few people ever go there. So you don't even get to see footage of some of the ancient sites there.
Wow.
They have murals and carvings that date over 8,000 years old. We're talking about the time of the Egyptians when they built the pyramids. And if, just to put a time scale here, what's her name? This is Cleopatra.
Yes.
Yeah. Cleopatra, to her, when the pyramids were built, was a further distance in history than Cleopatra is to us. Right? So when she was at the pyramids, to her, that was more ancient history than Cleopatra is history to us. And so were those carvings that I got to see in the middle of the Sahara Desert, where these nomadic people have lived for thousands of years. And, I was very fortunate enough to meet some of the people who are, coming from generations and generations of the people who have continued on this tradition of the Tuareg people living nomadically. And what's really interesting was the tribe that we visited was actually a matriarchal tribe. And this beautiful woman, she had two daughters, essentially gave us the permission to stay with them for a month. And so we lived with them, and it was really just documenting their day-to-day lives. And this is what we put into the photo book, was their day-to-day lives of people who live in literally one of the most harshest conditions known to man. So I guess people can pick up and read this book. And the other book that I'm working on right now, which I'm actually completing this year, is the story of walking Africa.
Wow.
It took me over 5 years to write this book. But what I've learned was, over time, the wisdom and the knowledge and the understanding of myself, but also more about what's going on in Africa, started to really help narrate the story of walking Africa. I felt like if I had written that book 5 years ago, it wouldn't be as meaningful or as deep as it is now. Because now I've had a lot more time to really think about a lot of each step that I've taken throughout that continent.
Yes. I can imagine like it would take that time just to compress and digest those moments, right?
Yeah.
Like it's almost like they would come back naturally, maybe, or like I'm so excited to read this book because what's gone into that,
Right.
like it carries so much within it. And I feel like it has such longevity. Like these stories you will tell us are timeless. Like they're like there's no limit to who they can impact, and the like just the profoundness of what you've shared today is life-changing to hear. So I can only imagine actually being able to sit down and like take that
Right.
journey with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of those tidbits. I don't even want to call it tidbits, but there's a lot of those sentiments in the book. And because for me, I feel like it would have been a waste had I gone to Africa and not learned anything.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these chapters are essentially lessons in story form.
It's amazing. Very excited. And I can't wait for everyone to check it out. And I want to thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your, parts of your journey with us and really being that catalyst for change.
Thank you. And, you say that I'm a torchbearer, but so are you.
Oh.
And that's why I'm here and that's why we're here.
Yes, absolutely. It's so true. Yeah. And, I feel that the world that we may envision is coming. We are part of it. We are part of this creating it. No matter how challenging or what comes our way. And for you to share today and for the viewers and the listeners, like we all carry a role. We all have communities. We all have places that we touch and people that we touch. And so if there's something that moved or touched you today, I want to encourage you to like do whatever that next action is that you've been inspired through Mario sharing today, whatever that may be, to make a difference, to make an impact. And it might even just be as simple as sharing your book, sharing some of the stories you shared today that now people are aware of. Say, hey, like, look at the world. Absolutely. We can do this. We can do that. We can make a change. And that spark or that catalyst is something that maybe for one of us, it may be insurmountable to hold for the world, but for all of us together,
yes,
like we can do that.
I absolutely believe that. Yes. And I think it starts with questioning things, because I say this because that's how I started, so this is from my own experience, but I feel like questioning things is the first step, really. Asking why you're doing these things, and it might drive you crazy, but that's part of the process in a way, right? Yeah. Because you're faced with what we call cognitive dissonance in a way, right? You're forced to understand a reality that once wasn't reality, and how do you cope with that? To understand that maybe the life that you've lived was not the authentic life, and that's very difficult for people to process. And so I understand that it's easier to ignore that and just to keep pretending that the life that has been fabricated and given to you is the real one. And so I encourage people to really push and question as deeply as you can and answer those questions with action. Yeah.
Yeah. So powerful. Thank you. Leave it at that. I love it. Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
wait to hear the actions that come from this conversation. So I want to thank you so
Hmm.
much. Yeah.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mario, for showing us that every step can be sacred and to question everything. Go out there, take action. And that true exploration begins when we move with intention, when we move from the heart, and when we move as one with Ubuntu. If this conversation inspired you, follow Mario's work and support his mission to bring equality, sustainability to the forefront of global exploration. And click all the links below. We want you to share this episode if it moved your heart with someone ready to walk their own path of purpose. And as always, stay present, stay purposeful, and remember, you are the catalyst.